Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Stingray Show. Today we got a special show. We have Mark Schlabach, the senior writer from ESPN. We'll talk to him about his too early to call top 25 for 2021. We'll also talk about the national championship and some other fun things. We also have another senior writer from ESPN, Adam Rittenberg. It's going to be a fun-packed show only on the Stingray Show.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you! This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn. Worst defense ever! So without further ado, here is the biggest. Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes. Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings. He's got it. Jennings. He's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee! They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium! Are you kidding me? My God almighty! What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end this game! What a play! Wow!
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Stingray Show. I think Steven's having a worse week than Ohio State, poor guy. He'll tell us and catch us up on all the fun about that. But again, today's show, very special show today. We've got Mark Schlabach from ESPN. We'll talk to him here shortly. And we'll also bring on Adam Rittenberg. And right now, let's welcome the man that's not having the best week. I look forward to seeing him and getting a prognosis. Hope he's okay. Steven, are you with us? I guess Stephen is not with us. So with that being said, we're going to talk to Mark Schlabach here very shortly. And let's see. Let's check on Stingray real quick. Stephen, are you with us now? All righty then. So go on and get your questions in for Stephen and I. And also, if you have any questions for Mark Schlabach or Adam Rittenberg, always feel free to put it in the chat here during the show, and we will try to get to those questions. No promises made, but we usually do a good job on doing that. So going over the championship game, it was a blowout like I expected. I thought it would be a good game. I thought it would be a lot of fireworks. I did not think the game would be decided as early as it was. I thought Alabama would kind of pull away in the second half. They pulled away kind of there in the second quarter of the game. And so hopefully here shortly, we can talk about that. And we're waiting on Stephen now. Stephen's sending me a text. And I'm ready. I guess we're bringing in Mark first. Stephen, man, I apologize, Stephen. You're having the worst Friday ever. You hadn't had a good week so far this week. You had with technical issues the other day with Coach Freeze. So without ado, let's go on and bring in our first guest today. He's a writer for ESPN. He's a Georgia graduate. His dog once escaped and got on to Foley Field there in Athens, Georgia. He is our good friend of the show. Let's welcome back Mark Schlabach. Mark, are you with us?
Hello.
Hey, Mark, are you there?
Good. Sorry. How are you?
We're doing good. I think Steven's having the worst day ever. So
that's not good.
Yeah, we'll go on and start without him. Mark, how was the national championship game? Did you make it?
I did not make it. I think we ended up only sending Andrea Adelson, who lives in Orlando, so she was able to drive down. So I watched it at home, like most people. I agreed with you. I did not think it was going to be close. In fact, I have a little wagering contest with one of my buddies over bowl season. We bet about $20 on every game and alternate picks, and he's a big Alabama fan, and he tried to slide in Alabama when it was my pick, and I said you couldn't give me Ohio State in 20 points. That ended up being true, but dominant performance by Alabama. What Nick Saban has accomplished there has been absolutely remarkable. I think the most impressive thing, and maybe the most underrated thing to me, is that he's now won 6 national championships at Alabama, and every one of them was a different starting quarterback.
Wow, that is impressive.
And keeps doing it after people have rated his staff, and that's happening again this year.
Yeah. Talking about his staff, what do you think about the new OC coming in from Houston?
I like Bill. He's a good man. He did a really good job getting Penn State back on track after the Sandusky scandal.
Right.
Didn't work out like he wanted in Houston with the Texans, but probably in hindsight, maybe wishes he'd stuck to coaching and not GMing. But what guys can accomplish in Tuscaloosa in terms of rehabbing their careers.
Right. Well, yeah. I think that's an understatement right now. How did you think Coach Saban? I know he didn't invent the wheel here, but I don't remember any coach at any time, pro or college, where, hey, come join me. You can rebuild your career. We'll get you a head coaching job here in a couple of years, or you'll go back to the NFL. I've never understood how Coach Saban has come about that. What are your thoughts on how Coach Saban has established that bar of bringing in coaches and making them better and sending them on their way?
Yeah, it's amazing. I was trying to think who the first guy really was. I mean, he's done it with Lane Kiffin.
Right.
He's done it with Charlie Strong, with Butch Jones, with Sarkisian. And for the most part, other than maybe Sarkisian, the guys that are the off-field analysts, Kyle Flood's another one. He's getting them at discount bottom rate prices because their previous schools are pretty much paying the bulk of their salary. So it's good for him as well. But, he's had a lot of success. And I guess when guys see other people resurrecting their careers and spending time with Alabama, more guys are apt to do it.
Mm-hmm. I had a brother-in-law. He was a off-the-field analyst on the last staff with Fulmer there at Tennessee and on the first staff with Kiffin. And I was so impressed with Kiffin when he came in, where he was getting a lot of coaches that were just gotten fired to be the analyst. And I was a little upset at that at first because I was like, you're taking this gig away from a GA, but that's kind of the standard now of bringing guys in on the cheap where another school's basically paying their salary because they got fired, and you can bring in and have these guys, doing what they're doing on the off field. But it seems like Saban has taken that to another level. What is the benefit to the layperson that doesn't know, that doesn't keep up? What's the benefit of what they're doing in that off-field role?
Yeah, you're breaking down film. You're helping with game planning, I'm sure. There's a little – I hadn't been over there as often here lately because of COVID, but, there's a hallway where all those guys have offices, or the majority, the higher profile guys have offices, and that's where all the analysts are. But, as long as these schools are going to keep signing contracts with coaches where they got to pay them exorbitant amounts of money for not doing their job very well, I think Alabama and some other places are going to continue to take advantage of it.
You mentioned Sark earlier. What do you think about the hire there in Austin?
I think he's earned it. He had his personal problems at USC and seems to have put those in the rearview mirror, and is dedicated to doing things the right way. He did a phenomenal job at Alabama. It was only a year ago we were talking about LSU maybe being the best offense in SEC history, and I'm not sure you can't compare Alabama with them and make the argument that maybe this was the best one. But he's got a decent track record as a head coach at Washington and USC. Texas, for whatever reason, just can't really seem to get out of its way when it comes to trying to put that program back into the upper echelon of the sport. But he'll call plays and do a great job on offense, and we'll see what he does with the rest of his staff. But he's got to recruit well. Plenty of players in Texas, but they got to get back to getting the majority of the good ones, and that's going to be more difficult with Jimbo at Texas A&M and some of the other SEC schools coming into Texas as well.
Is it safe to say that I think this is safe to say all schools would love to have a billionaire donor, but the problem at Texas is that there's too many billionaire donors, and their egos are getting in the way of keeping Texas afloat. We hear it every other game, every other Saturday. Texas is back. Texas is back. Texas is not back. Is the billionaires keeping them from coming back?
Yeah, I think you look at two of the schools that have made changes, and a third one that might still make a change depending on how things shake out. I just think, you look at Auburn, you look at Texas, you look at Tennessee. There's just too many factions,
right?
And they need to let the athletic director and the president and the athletic board do their jobs. And I think you saw that a little bit at Auburn when they went outside the Auburn family and hired Brian Harsin from Boise State. Maybe didn't just give the job to Kevin Steele. I think Alan Green kind of put his foot down and said, no, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And I think Texas, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of oil billionaires, barons out there that want their egos stroked and write big checks, and they want to be involved in the decision making.
You were mentioning Sark, and we're talking about that Texas thing. This time last year, it looked like he was going to be named the head coach at Mississippi State, and then it looked like he was going to be named head coach at Auburn. Are those two schools going to deeply regret not giving him the gig?
Yeah, if he would have taken it. He was selective, which was smart, and it had to be one of the blue bloods. Where I think he would have waited. I think we've seen more guys maybe do that. We've seen Billy Napier turn down some really good jobs. We've seen Tony Elliott continuously turn down jobs, waiting for the right one. So I think, in the case of like Sark and Tony Elliott, when you're making $1.5 million, $2 million to be a coordinator and all the pressure's on the head coach, it's not a bad position to be in, to sit there and wait for the job you really, really want.
Mm-hmm. We had Hugh Freeze on the show on Monday and before the game, and he was talking about, all things football related. And I purposely did not ask him about the Tennessee gig because I knew he was going to give us the typical coaching answer. Is Tennessee actually going to heavily consider Hugh Freeze with NCAA infractions kind of breathing down their neck? And you had a guy that had trouble with the NCAA with infractions. Is Tennessee going to make that jump? Because I don't see Philip Fulmer doing that.
Nah, if they make a change, and hopefully we'll find out shortly, sooner rather than later, if they're going to bring back Jeremy Pruitt or let him go. But if they get rid of Jeremy Pruitt for some NCAA violations, I think it's going to be really, really difficult to bring in Hugh Freeze to replace him. I'm sure there's a segment of the fan base that would love to have him, but I think there's a reason he hasn't been hired. He wasn't really considered at Auburn. He wasn't considered at South Carolina. I don't know that there's a mandate from the league that says you can't hire him yet. He hasn't done his enough punishment. But I think, as long as Ole Miss is still trying to get back on its feet from probation and scholarship restrictions, I think the league might prefer that he not be a head coach in the SEC.
I've heard the story a million times. And of course, I was a student in the mid-90s at Mississippi State, but it was always a big thing where Roy Kramer basically told Larry Templeton, don't hire Jackie Sherrill. And Larry Templeton ran that red light and hired Jackie Sherrill back in 1990. December of 1991 was the first season. Would an AD dare do that now?
Yeah, possibly. LSU still got Will Wade employed as their basketball coach. So I guess anything's possible, but schools have seemed to be a little bit more renegade than they were in the past, maybe. But I think Greg Sankey has built in enough equity, not to Mike Slive's level yet, but I think with the job he did this year, I think he's pretty well respected around the league, and people respect his authority.
I got you. Any idea where Tennessee might turn? Some names they might be floated to that job if they do make a change.
Somebody keep trying to call me. I apologize. I think Doug Marrone, the former Jaguars coach, who's got some connections to Tennessee, the state of Tennessee. Boots Donnelly, the former MTSU AD's his father-in-law. Tom Herman, who was let go at Texas. Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina would be a young up-and-comer guy, or not as young, but an up-and-coming guy that could be in play there. Billy Napier again. Like I said, he's turned down some jobs. Is he going to take over a program that may or may not be headed towards probation? Kevin Steele, who they just hired on Monday as a defensive assistant, that seemed to me that maybe that was a way that if they did have to make a change, Kevin's got some head coaching experience. I think he was the runner-up when Pruitt got the job. Maybe he's able to bridge them to whether either as an interim or until they can get a head coach, just to try to keep the program afloat.
To your knowledge, will a lot of coaches skip that Tennessee job just due to the NCAA infractions breathing down their neck, or is the money too good and it's like, yeah, I'll take it and take my lumps and we'll get going the right way?
I mean, I still think it'd be attractive to some people just because it's an SEC head coaching gig and it's going to pay well, but it's late in the process. You could be looking at a couple of years probation depending on how things shake out. But, Tennessee to me has always been one of the more difficult jobs just because you don't have in that really great fertile recruiting base. When Tennessee was really good under Philip Fulmer, they were having to go down to Atlanta and get kids and into Georgia. And now Georgia's good. Clemson's. North Carolina's doing good things too. And those have all been areas where Tennessee has traditionally gone in and got players.
I got you. Tom Lavelle, one of our viewers, wanted to ask you a question. He's going to ask us, will Kirby ever win a championship at Georgia?
He's been, he was one play away. That's the first time anybody had ever heard of Devontae Smith in the national championship. It's probably one that'll haunt Georgia for a while. Look, I think, every year, I just did my way too early top 25 on Monday. I think every year there are 4 or 5 teams that are going to be in contention for a national championship, and it's Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and Oklahoma and Georgia right now. And Georgia's been there and been close twice, and he's just got to figure out a way to beat Alabama. And, I've had some people say to me, Kirby doesn't get it done next year, he's going to start to feel pressure. Nobody's beating Alabama. I mean, Clemson's been able to get him a couple of times, but, what Nick Saban's done is probably the greatest run in college football history, and there's really nobody beating them. Georgia's been as close as anybody other than Clemson. So, we'll have to see. They're loaded next year. I mean, they got all the pieces in place. They just got to figure out how to get over the hump.
Hey, who's going to be the starting running back on that team? Is it going to be James Cook or is it going to be Zamir White? Because James Cook really came on strong here this past season.
Yeah, I think, they always like to play 2 or 3. You saw that with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb should have probably got the ball every time and about 30 times more a game. But, he's going to rotate backs. You got Zamir White, who's, would be 2 years coming off his second ACL injury. So maybe he's more healthy. He hasn't shown a lot of wiggle or really good vision yet, but, he's a physical, effective runner. I thought Todd Monken did a better job of getting Cook involved in the passing game and putting him out in the slot a little bit. I think Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton might be their most talented backs. They're both young.
Oh, wow.
Kendall Milton was a kid out of California who was one of the top 4 backs in the country last year, and he got limited carries and got hurt late. But, we'll see. It's, there's only one football, and they're going to have to figure out a way to get some guys some carries.
Going to your top 25, too early top 25, I was looking over it the other day, and I was previewing it before the show. One team I definitely wanted to ask you about, Texas A&M. Kellen Mond, I believe he was in the last team that R.C. Slocum coached. It seems like he's been there for 20 seasons. But you really think A&M's going to be that strong of a team next year without Kellen Mond?
Yeah, it's not even as much without Kellen Mond as without that offensive line. I think they got 3 of those offensive linemen leaving, was really, had been their Achilles heel the last couple of years. And this year, probably maybe the second best offensive line in the league. I just Jimbo's recruited well. I got a lot of respect for Mike Elko, his defensive coordinator. I don't have the depth chart in front of me, but I think they're bringing 7 or 8 guys back on defense. There's a kid out of Zach Calendara, I think is his name. I'm probably butchering that, but he's from Norcross, where I'm from, so that makes it even worse. But he's got a couple of young quarterbacks, and Jimbo coaches quarterbacks as well as anybody. The tailback finally got some help last year, so again, same situation as Georgia. You can be good, but you still got to beat Alabama somehow.
Mark, I might need to borrow your glasses. Steven, is that you? Are you finally with us?
I'm finally with you guys, man. I do apologize. I've actually got a severely sprained wrist. So that was the reason for the late start. I do apologize. Mark, I hope you're doing well today.
Doing well, Steven. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Listen, so my question is going back to Auburn just for a second. How do you think Brian Harsin will do down on the plains at Auburn?
He did a nice job at Boise State. He inherited a good situation. Chris Peterson laid the groundwork there, and Harsin stepped in, and did a nice job. My big question when I saw it was, how is he going to recruit in the South?
Yeah. And
recruit against other SEC coaches. He brought in Mike Bobo, who I think is one of the more underrated recruiters out there. When he was at Georgia, he recruited Todd Gurley and AJ Green and Matthew Stafford and some other guys. So he's been on some of the bigger names that played at Georgia when he was there. He brought in Will Friend, who I don't even think he did a cup of coffee at South Carolina before he left to go to Auburn. So he's got some SEC flavor on that staff, which was important. I think he'll have to continue to bring in guys like that to help him recruit. But, again, like I was saying earlier, I like it because it's outside of the Auburn family. And,
yes,
he's not going to be maybe as sensitive to some of the old school guys that have been there forever trying to run the show.
Mark, I've always had this theory. Feel free to blow it up and set it on fire if you'd like. Did Mark Richt get fired because his name's not Nick Saban? I always felt like that bar was set so incredibly high for Mark Richt, and he got fired after winning 40 games in his last 4 years. Got fired because he wasn't winning a national championship. Is that somewhat safe to say?
Yeah. I mean, what had he been there? 13, 14 years, maybe? Yeah. That's a long time in today's college football. Yeah. Most guys don't come anywhere near that. But, he could never get over the hump. He was close, too. I mean, he had him when he had Aaron Murray, that last second play down at the goal line where the kid caught the ball and time ran out. I mean, that was probably their best opportunity. That 1 year, Georgia beat the stew out of Hawaii in the Sugar Bowl. I think that might have been the most talented team in the country, but it had gotten boat raced by Tennessee early in the year. So, Mark won a lot of games, averaged 10 wins a year, dominated Auburn, dominated Georgia Tech, 2 of the biggest rivals, but, just couldn't get it done. I thought at the end, they kind of choked him out a little bit. He didn't get nearly the support that Kirby's getting in terms of facilities and analysts and coordinator salaries and things like that. But I think by that point they had just figured out that it was time to make a change, and Greg McGarity wanted to go to Kirby.
And my last question for you, Mark, is this. Last time you were on, you told us about the squirrel story from the Duck Dynasty people. Can you tell us another fun or interesting story that happened behind the scenes while you were doing their books?
Let me think. There's some. The first time I went out there, the first time I went duck hunting with them out there, I had my shotgun with me, and Phil told me to leave the shotgun in the truck because I didn't get to shoot. They wanted to see if I could shoot before they let me in the blind.
Right.
and so I never got to shoot.
That's awesome, man.
But is Uncle Si? I always get the feeling what you see on TV, it might be really him. That's not really a character. That he's just kind of that kind of out there kind of fella.
Nah, that's 100%. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on that show that was made for television.
Right.
His personality was not made for television. That is 100% authentic. My best Uncle Si story. When I was writing his second book, I believe, I got there and he wrote me a check to cover some expenses, and we talked for 5 or 6 hours working on his book. He said, I got to go. I got a poker game tonight. It's Friday night. And I said, well, can I come play poker with you? He says, yeah, come on. And we walked out of his buddy's house about 6 o'clock in the morning. And when we got back to the house, I gave him back his check and wrote him another check. He took me to the cleaners. And it was the only poker game, Stephen, that lasted from 10 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning where not a single alcoholic beverage was served.
Wow. That's like a world record. You should be in world records.
And that's why Si took me to the cleaners.
Yeah.
Wow. So Si can play some poker, huh?
Yeah. No, they got me on Texas Hold'ems. Those boys, those Louisiana, you don't mess with those coon boys. You know what's down there when it comes to poker.
Oh, that's great. Tell us something about Si that we may not know.
Let me see. His stories were all hilarious, but some of his stories from Vietnam. I'm trying to think. He's been married to the same woman forever. And when they redid their vows and had a ceremony, he recorded a CD for her. And whenever my son ticks me off, I got a 12-year-old son. Whenever my son makes me mad, I put Si's CD in my truck and start playing it to drive him insane because it's so bad.
Oh, that's great.
That's wonderful.
Great. Hey, I had a fun question for you. We had Mr. College Football on, and he made this statement about Nick Saban, and it kind of tickled me. He mentioned that Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach in the history of college football, but Bear Bryant is the greatest coach that Alabama has ever had and ever will have. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know that you can. Tony said that?
Yeah.
It's kind of a contradictory statement, but I get where he's going with it. I would say, I got to think Nick's the greatest. Saban's the greatest coach in college football history. But, Bear did it when you were allowed to have 150 players or whatever.
I have no idea what happened.
You might have got a phone call. See if he joins us back real quick.
So I'm back with the show, man. How are you doing today?
And you've got to stop being a superhero at night, Steven, with all these injuries you're taking on.
I know, man. It's ridiculous.
And so I was kind of worried about you.
Thank you, man. Oh, it's nothing but a sprain, but it's still hurting me pretty bad, though.
I got you. I hope we didn't lose. Mark, are you back with us?
Not yet, no. Completely left. So I don't know what happened, but we will wait here just a second to see if he does pop back.
There was one last question I wanted to ask Mark. Florida State was so patient.
Yes.
With Bobby Bowden. And Bobby Bowden didn't win his first national title until I think his 21st or 22nd year.
Yes.
At Florida State. And here you go. You had, Mark Richt, and he was like in his 15th year, 16th year, something like that, at Georgia. And he was winning 10 games a year.
Yep.
140 over the last 4 years. And I was like, he's right there. I still think Georgia made a big mistake. Yeah, but I will say this. Kirby has done the exact same job Mark Richt has. They did not go down. Some would argue that they've gone a tad bit up. The college football playoff wasn't around when Mark Richt was there at Georgia. But,
yes,
it's interesting to see how all of this is coming about. But The year that everyone had 2 losses and LSU won the national title that year.
Yep.
I really thought Georgia, if we had a playoff that year, I really think Georgia would have won the national championship. They were a great team that year.
I guess we lost him, man. I do not know what happened.
His phone might have died. He might have. Hey, Si might have been watching and gave a call and say, don't talk about my poker games.
Yes. So who knows? All right, man. Well, if he does pop back up, we will definitely go back to him.
So yeah, and I want to thank Tom for getting in his question for Mark. But yeah, so good stuff. Yeah, I wanted to ask him some more questions about his 2 early top 25. So maybe we can get Mark on here before the month's out again and see what we can do. But Steven, you feeling okay, man?
Man, I've had a tough time with this wrist, but I'm hanging in there, man. I'm hanging in there.
What in the world did you do, brother?
Just lifting some heavy stuff this past weekend and severely strained my wrist.
I'm going to ask that question again. You need to fabricate your story. Talk about beating up some bad guys or something. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, Steven, what did you do to your wrist, man? Are you okay?
I beat the crap out of some unruly football fans.
And who were they cheering for?
I can't tell you that.
Well, all right. Well, Steven, what did you think about the national championship game? I was mentioning earlier in the show, I hope you heard me, that you've had a bad week. You had technical problems.
Yes.
Coach Freeze. You've had the wrist injury. You got caught up in traffic and kind of joined us late on the show today. And you picked Ohio State. This is not a good week for you, man.
No, it is not. But Alabama, man, they're dominant. I mean, they're really dominant. And I really felt like that, there was a couple plays there in the middle of the game that really could have switched it. And I'll give you my prediction here in just a second about the football game. But first off, Alabama, they always show up for big-time games. And I thought Ohio State played them toe-to-toe for a good portion of that ball game.
Yeah. I think Ohio State mentally wasn't prepared for the national championship game. And what I mean by that, with some of the COVID stuff going on, having your third string kicker, they weren't at full strength. And yeah, they had their big time playmakers. I think they were missing a lineman. I think they were missing 2 guys on defense, but I think Ohio State could have played with 13 on defense and you still couldn't stop Devontae.
So as you see here, right here, Alabama was up 21-14. They forced Ohio State to kick a field goal. Then Alabama goes down and makes it 28-17. And then right before the half, they make it 35-17 before Ohio State even touches the ball again. And basically, if you kick field goals, instead of touchdowns, you're playing catch up against a great football team like Alabama. So I just knew when they kicked that field goal there, I was like, well, they're going to be chasing points for the rest of the evening, and that was pretty much the ball game.
Hey, give props to Coach Freeze.
Yes.
Because he said it here on the show on Monday, and he also said it during the ESPN broadcast that night.
Yes.
The team that has the best red zone defense is going to win the national championship. And he was right. Bama made that stop, just like you mentioned, and Ohio State had to kick that field goal with a third-string kicker. Props to him.
And then it was bye-bye. Yeah.
And Bama went right back down and scored again. So Bama scores a touchdown. Ohio State answers with a drive but gets a field goal. Mm-hmm. And then Bama goes and gets a touchdown. And then before it's all said and done, gets another one.
Yep.
And then, it was over. Tom put in another message again. Let's see. Yeah, Tom, you're right. Georgia was the only team leading Alabama at halftime this year, and they were doing it with the third-string quarterback. Give props to Ole Miss. Ole Miss played them tough, but the team that played them the best this year was the Florida Gators in the SEC championship game. That was by far Bama's biggest struggle this year was the Florida Gators, Dan Mullen and the Florida Gators. And I know that Dan ended the season in the last regular season game to LSU. They were looking forward to the SEC championship game. They barely lose that SEC championship game. And let's call it what it is. Bama was ahead in there, and Florida got a garbage touchdown to get it within a score there at the end.
Yes.
And then Florida, basically the whole team, all the leaders of that team jump out, and I should say all the leaders, but some of the leaders and a lot of the starters of that team opted out for the bowl game. And, they just got boat raced there by Oklahoma in the bowl game. So missed my mute button. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I do want to hear – I want your reaction to this. Now, this, of course, was Monday when we talked to Coach Freeze. I want your reaction to this because we really didn't get to talk about it, but it is something that we're going to ask Adam about it here in just a second. But this is Coach Freeze this past Monday talking about recruiting issues in college football right now with the COVID pandemic.
It's a whole new world. You're living and in the recruiting world is solely driven by communication through Zoom right now, or FaceTime, or texting and phone calls, which was pretty normal anyway. But really, this new world of visual recruiting through technology is the way of the world right now. It was the entire recruiting class of last year, and by the time we are set free to resume as normal, which who knows when that is. Right now it's set for April 15th as a tentative date, but every date has been backed up. So I don't know that will happen either. And so you're basically looking at two classes that you have recruited by trying to evaluate and get to know young men and their families through the virtual world. And it's I don't know. There's parts that I really like. I don't like going on the road to begin with, and I know our assistant coaches love being at home with their families. But you certainly need times to go eyeball and see kids and get to know them a little better than probably we're able to do on Zoom and other forms. But it is what it is. We can't complain about it, and we're not in control of it. So we've got to do the best we can. And I think we signed a heck of a class so far, in the 18 that we signed in the early period. And now you add to this dilemma that we're facing with not being able to go and get to know kids and families in recruiting, and you add to it this new transfer portal world that we're getting ready to experience. And man, we're in for a roller coaster ride. I mean, rosters can now change drastically in a matter of days, and I don't know. Somebody's going to have to sit down and have some reasonable discussions with the coaches, because I don't know that the people that have made and is going to pass these have really taken into account the dilemma they're putting us in and trying.
So, of course, that was Coach Freeze earlier this week talking about the issues they're facing, the coaches and the players, due to basically recruiting. Yeah.
I think that the transfer portal is going to blow up, Stephen. I think the transfer portal is going to melt over the next 2 years. There's going to be so many things that coaches got wrong on this. You look at some of your teams in the SEC, your blue bloods, they're always going to get the 5 stars and highly recruited 4 stars. But, the other schools, and let's just say basically take away your top 4 schools in the SEC. Well, let's just say this, take away your top 2 schools in the SEC. And then the other 12, they get a lot of their kids through camps. And so there's a lot of kids that sign kids during the week at camp. Well, there was not a camp this year.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of misses this year with recruiting. And there's going to be a lot of guys transferring out, with the seniors being able to stay this year and not count against the roster. there's going to be a lot of ebb and flow that's going to be happening over the next two, if not three seasons of college football.
Yes.
So I think this will change the recruiting world some, yeah, but I do think that it's going to really change some things up.
Well, let's go on ahead and bring on our next guest, Mr. Adam Rittenberg, to get his take on the national championship. Adam, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, good guys. How you doing?
Good. So we apologize for the time mix-up. I'm actually just getting back from the doctor. I have a severely sprained wrist, so I apologize about that.
Well, he's in that Texas Tornado death match, and it didn't turn out too well for the other guy either. So, he's going to be all right, Adam.
Yes.
Playing hurt. That's admirable.
All right, let me just go ahead and ask, what were your thoughts about the national championship game this past Monday night?
Yeah, no, it was a very impressive performance by Alabama. To be able to, I was really impressed by their defense.
Yes.
Obviously, Ohio State wasn't, Justin Fields wasn't 100%, but and then they lose Trey Sermon on the first snap. But they really did a nice job of limiting the running game and then just preventing some of the downfield plays that had really defined Ohio State. You had a couple of them here and there, but they were able to hold Ohio State to some field goals and some empty possessions. And then Ohio State's defense, you just couldn't measure up. And that was just certainly disheartening for Ohio State, but just reinforces this is one of the great offenses, maybe the greatest offense we've ever seen, top to bottom. There just wasn't a weakness on that offense. And I was so impressed with, how Alabama was able to convert, those situations, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. Even there was a play where Najee Harris turned what was going to look like a short gain on 2nd down, which would have set up 3rd and long, and he almost gets a 1st down, and then the 3rd down play is almost automatic. It's just so disheartening for a defense when you feel like you can get an offense into a less advantageous situation, and either they spin out of it and create a more advantageous situation, or they convert a 3rd and 5 like it's nothing. And that was the case. Ohio State for a while was making Alabama earn it, and then they just kind of broke, like a lot of defenses do against the Tide. So certainly one of the great seasons that we've seen maybe ever in college football.
Adam, how do you think this team would stack up against LSU's team last year? I mean, people were saying this last year that LSU, this is one of the greatest college football teams ever. And then here a year later, we're seeing this. Obviously, Alabama was put through the ringer more, playing 11 SEC games if you count the championship and then the playoff. But how do you compare the two from last year to this year?
Yeah, I mean, both great teams. I think you have to give the edge to Joe Burrow at quarterback. But, wow, Mac Jones was unbelievable, overall. I mean, the numbers and unflappable and really didn't have any bad games. You just go through it, and it's so close, right? I mean, Najee Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are two very different running backs, but both extremely effective for those offenses. I'd probably give Alabama the edge on the offensive line. And then, boy, those two receiving cores, try to find me better sets of receivers than we saw with Alabama and LSU the last couple of years. So It is really close with the two offenses. And defensively, neither defense was, elite, but I think both were good enough to win with. And certainly Alabama, the way they performed in the playoff, really changed my view of how good of a defense they were, especially at the line of scrimmage, because coaches were telling me, Patrick Surtain's great, Will Anderson's great, Dylan Moses is great. Defensive line, it's not anything special. But Barmore and that group really impressed, with how they, helped control the line of scrimmage, put some pressure on Justin Fields. Never really let Master T get going, other than a couple of drives, so that group was certainly outstanding.
Yeah, do you think that the dynasty that Alabama is having right now, is it good for college football, or is it bad for college football, or is it both?
Well, I mean, the sport's been defined by certain dynasties over time. I think the length of the dynasty is a little concerning, that nobody's really been able to challenge Alabama consistently. And you look at what they have coming back with their talent, even though they lose great players, they're still recruiting at such a high level. It's going to be tough. And, I think college football would be better if certain programs that have the capability to achieve at a high level did that on a more consistent basis. I think that's what's going to make the playoff more interesting. And so I'm talking about USC, Texas, Georgia for sure, LSU to a degree, although they at least broke through one year, Penn State, Michigan. I mean, these are programs that have the ability, I think, to win at a high level. They're just not doing it enough. And so that's why we're getting – it's not so much an Alabama problem. It's like a same team problem. It's a Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State issue. Who can overtake them? Florida State has had the ability at times. Florida, how close are they to doing it? Until there's a kind of that mix of 8 or 10 teams that are in that playoff mix, it's going to probably be the same 2 or 3 that are winning every year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go back to another team up north that gets a lot of scrutiny here as of late, because now they are 0-7 in big-time bowl games. In your opinion, what is holding Notre Dame back from taking that next step to go to competing with teams when they face them in the playoffs?
Right. I think it's pretty clear. They're not elite enough at the skill positions on offense, including quarterback. I mean, you looked at the 4 quarterbacks in the playoff, and I like Ian Book. I think he's a heck of a college player and great athlete, and he really helped Notre Dame. He's a winner, as Brian Kelly would say over and over, but just not a guy that's going to help you beat Alabama.
Yes.
Or if they faced Ohio State, I don't think they would have beaten Ohio State and Justin Fields. So that's where they need the upgrade. They need the elite. It's very clear. I mean, Texas is doing the same thing. They are hiring Sark to become elite on offense. And Sam Ehlinger, great college player, was never elite. And Ian Book, great college player, not elite enough to win the championship. And that's what's – Notre Dame is very good along the line of scrimmage. And you even saw defensively, they did a better job against Alabama than just about anybody. Very sound defensively. They got good players on that side of the ball. But at receiver – maybe a little bit in the defensive backfield, and certainly at quarterback, they need to improve. And it's very clear what they need. Now, whether they can get there or not, remains to be seen.
Yes.
Al, thank you for bringing that up. What are some teams that we could look forward to in the future that could become blue bloods? I know you mentioned Texas, Notre Dame's trying to do it, but who are some teams that are actually kind of flirting of being elite? Making this kind of more of an even college football landscape?
Well, Oklahoma's on the cusp. I mean, they were making the playoff every year until this year, and they have improved defensively with Alex Grinch as the coordinator. Can they improve enough? Because they have the offense. They got the juice on offense with Lincoln Riley calling plays and Spencer Rattler now at quarterback, and I like what they have coming back on that side of the ball. Offensive line, their offensive line is right up there with Alabama and Notre Dame and Ohio State as far as talent, but their issue is defense. They're just so far behind on that side of the ball. Can they catch up? I think Texas, again, it's about quarterback play. It's about offensive proficiency. USC has had a little bit of that, but man, USC is a rough watch. I don't know how much you guys watch them. They're just a messy football team. A lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers. They're inefficient at times, but talent-wise, they're not that far away, and they are bringing in a pretty good recruiting class. I think Florida, similar to Oklahoma, Florida will have great quarterback play and great offenses with Dan Mullen as its coach, but their defense took a big step back. And so how much closer to that level can they get defensively? You clearly don't need to be a top 10 defense, as Alabama and LSU showed the last 2 years, but you can't be, a top 60 defense. You got to be better than that to win the national championship. So Florida, Georgia, I mean, this is a year with some of the players that they have coming back. Do we look at Georgia? Are they finally going to do it? I'm going to turn 40 years old in August, and they have not won a national championship in my lifetime, which is pretty hard to do at a school like Georgia, given the resources they have. So maybe they're the team that can get there and stay there. They were obviously there in 2017, and then they were unable to stay there and continue. So but with JT Daniels and their passing game and some of the numbers they put up late in the season, maybe they're a team that can finally take that step.
I would love to get your take on this. Obviously, Nick Saban tried it. It didn't really work out. Cliff Kingsbury tried it. Didn't work out. Chip Kelly did. How do you think Urban Meyer is going to do with Jacksonville?
Right. I think it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I think Urban has at least done his research going in and knows some of the differences in coaching in the NFL. I thought I liked what he had to say earlier today at his introduction. about that. He's going to push players, but he also wants players to have as good of an experience, and part of that's hiring a great staff. And I think he's always done that throughout his career. And I would expect his staff with the Jags to be really impressive. He's obviously going to have, Ustad Khan, the owner, said it today that no matter who they hire as general manager, this is Urban's show and Urban's vision that's going to be played out here with their draft capital and so forth. He obviously knows the college game as well as anyone. He studied players. So I think he'll be very helpful as as somebody who's evaluating college talent in a draft. A lot of these coaches in the NFL, they certainly go to the Senior Bowl and they scout guys and they're involved in the draft process. But Urban is not far removed from the college game. He spent the last 2 years as a college football analyst, so he knows these players really well. I think that's going to help, at least for these initial drafts that he has with the Jags.
Adam, I'm fixing to turn this to a personal interest story. Your maps on the back of your wall are ADD's taking over. What are some fun places you've been, and why do you have the maps? Are you a geography nerd like I am?
It's funny. I think my wife had this upside down one. I don't know why. It's funny that both of them are up there. My son's a big geography guy, so he knows all this. He's only 7, but he knows all the states and the state capitals. So on the other wall, I got all my college football stuff because I do my television shots. You can see my camera there, so it's facing that way. And so I got my college football stuff on the other side of the desk.
What's one of your relics there, your college football stuff that you kind of take pride in?
Oh, wow. I'm trying to think of, I got some banners. I got this when I went to A&M a couple years ago for the Alabama game.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the administrators at Clemson saw me on TV, so he sent me this. To have that in the background, and so there's a couple things up there. I probably need to spruce it up a little bit. Some college football books, and try to mix up the banners a little bit for next season.
What's a college football rivalry that you have not been to yet that you would like to catch?
There's quite a lot. I've been to all the Big Ten ones, and then I grew up in Pac-12 territory, so I would grow up going to the big game, Cal, Stanford. But all the great SEC ones. Never been to Alabama, Auburn. I have been to Auburn, Georgia. Certainly, Florida State would be one for me. I've been to most of the Notre Dame ones just because I've covered Notre Dame over the years pretty well. And I last year was my first Red River game, which was awesome with OU Texas at the Cotton Bowl, and would highly recommend that for any college football fan. So it's probably most of the SEC games. Florida, Tennessee would be a good one. Alabama, LSU would be a good one. But I have most of the others covered.
I got a quick story for you for the Red River rivalry shootout. A college roommate of mine, his dad played football at Oklahoma, and of course the state fair is going on, as you well know, with that game.
Sure.
But he always made the joke that coach would never let him out to the state fair, and Texas would always get to go to the state fair. And he said those guys would end up in fights and everything else. And he played back there in the 70s, but he said, it wasn't until my junior year at Oklahoma that I learned that the Texas was the Longhorns. We always thought they were the unicorns, and they gave the hand symbol of Y.
There you go.
With all that, your favorite rivalries, what made you become a college football writer?
Well, I think it's just because it was a sport that I always loved. My family, we grew up. When I was really young, we were in Boston, and then we moved out to California and lived in Berkeley. So I grew up going to Cal Stanford games and Cal games, and it was pretty accessible back then. I had season tickets when I was in high school, so just really took to the sport. And then when I wanted to, I knew I wanted to write. I wanted to write about sports, and then going to school in the Big Ten, it just became a natural. So college football was to me the thing that you had to write about, and it just kind of continued from that point on. I'm still interested in it. I like other sports, but there's nothing that motivates me and gets me as excited as some of the things in the unique parts of college football. So I guess it started out more fandom, and then as I evolved and went to school in an area where college football was a much bigger deal. It sort of was a natural avenue for me to continue in that path.
Well, we know you're a Northwestern guy, and so I want to ask you, use Northwestern as your answer. What's your favorite college campus to go to?
Yeah, and it's not Northwestern. I'm trying to think of on a regular basis. There's like campuses are tough because I normally just go to the towns and don't spend.
All right, what's your favorite college town? We'll make it easier on you.
Yeah, there's a lot of them too. I mean, certainly, in the Big Ten, it's Wisconsin. And again, that's a good example. I don't spend a ton of time on their campus, but I spend a lot of time in Madison. Even my family and I will go there. It's only 2.5 hours from here, just to check it out. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of campuses themselves. I mean, Auburn's campus is beautiful. Love going on Auburn's campus. A&M. I remember I had a couple of days down there and spent time on their campus. Out west, the Oregon campus is just beautiful. So green out there. Washington has a beautiful campus. Been to that one. Colorado. I hadn't been to Colorado in really ever until the last few years, and I've been out there a couple of times. Once for work, and a couple other times just to go. And they've got an awesome campus there in Boulder, and I haven't seen a game at Folsom Field, but that's certainly on my list.
And my last question for you is this. Actually, we were playing it as you joined us. Coach Freeze was on the show on Monday talking about the issues that were going to be in recruiting this year because it's all, Zoom-based. You can't have play-by-play. You can't be face-to-face. What ultimately do we need to change in the sport about recruiting, do you think, and especially surrounding the transfer portal?
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, certainly there's some advantages to recruiting over Zoom. I think some coaches have said they have gotten to know these guys better and their families and can spend more time with them. I think that the concern, and I was on a call with Todd Berry from the AFCA earlier this week, and he said that the problem is, because the transfer portal is so prominent and you're going to have so much movement later in the calendar, guys making moves now, but even all the way through May into June as a one-time transfer. How can we backfill that? How can we still have guys fill those scholarships? So, does there need to be a June signing date or some type of period in June of signing or value? I mean, it's going to be more complex because the amount of turnover on rosters into and out of the portal is going to be significant every year. And some schools are just going to recruit the portal, which is, I know, a concern for a lot of coaches. So, they will adjust. I know they're not happy about it, and they wish it wasn't the case, but I don't think we're going to go away from this path and this trend. So, but it will be interesting to monitor here the next few years, obviously beginning this year.
Yes.
Well, Adam, my last question is going back to human interest, and I'll make it fine. Your visits to Auburn, one of my favorite restaurants when I was in television, I had to go over there all the time. What was it? Was it Amsterdam Cafe? Have you ever ate Amsterdam Cafe? That place is amazing at Auburn.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. I don't know if I ate there. Is that the breakfast place?
Oh
no, I think I know what you're talking about. I have not. No, I don't think I ate there, but I walked by it and it was just packed when I was in. I ate at a place near the highway, which was really good. And I got a shirt from it. I forget the name. And it was just great, like Southern food. And then I hit up a couple of one of the breakfast places that is famous, like maybe a mile from campus. And I mean, it's just fun. We did a fun thing back when I was covering the Big Ten, is we would send writers from one league to another area for the weekend. And so it was very different from what we usually did, and we had a lot more free time. And I remember Jay Jacobs took me around the hay fields, and it was much more about experiencing the other place. And it was the week of the Georgia-Auburn game in 2013, the prayer at Jordan-Hare game.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for Eagle practice and hung out with a bunch of Auburn fans in their tailgates. And one guy I still talk to this day, and really was able to experience Auburn. So I feel like in some ways I know that SEC campus and environment better than anywhere else, even though I've been to games at Georgia and LSU and places like that. But really fun overall experience for any college football fan.
Adam, I'm going to have my people call your people. Maybe we can get us a traveling show either on the Travel Channel or on the Food Network. We'll just keep going to these college towns, right?
Let's do it. I'm down. Whatever you want to do.
All right, and I want to pick your brain about this real quick. Who is winning, in your opinion, or who is making it to the Super Bowl out of the remaining teams in the NFL?
Sorry, Super Bowl pick? You cut out there for a second. Is that what you want?
Yeah, Super Bowl, yes.
Wow. I think he still probably got to go with the Chiefs out of the AFC. Although I'm really excited to see what happens if the Ravens can maybe pull it off. And then, God, I kind of hope the Saints make it happen. They've been so close, and I got a buddy who works on the staff there, and I'd love to see him win a Super Bowl because they've been right there. So we'll find out. Two old quarterbacks going at it on Sunday night. Should be a fun one this weekend.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, we apologize about moving the time around. But before we let you go, is there any kind of piece that you would like to plug or anything like that?
Yeah, we'll have some pieces in the next few weeks. One that went up today is just the coaching hot seat, which I cover quite a bit, looking ahead for the 2021 season. No, there was obviously more changes than I think some people anticipated in the last cycle, but they're still they're looking at 2021 as a big year. So that's right now on ESPN Plus. So
okay. Well, Adam, thank you so much, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Okay, guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, man. Well, that was exciting and a great little interview there. And Adam's becoming one of my favorite guests.
Adam is a blast to have. I really enjoy having Adam. His insight is a different take. It's a unique take.
Yes.
That I've always enjoyed hearing. But Adam is one of those guys that's really been putting in the time, one of the hardest working men there at ESPN. And with all the cutbacks that ESPN's had, two guys that they kept were two guys that we've had on the show today, Mark Schlabach and Adam Rittenberg. So it shows you the value that ESPN thinks of both of those guys as senior writers.
And Adam Rittenberg also writes a lot about the Big Ten. And we don't get a lot of that around here. So that's the reason I wanted to bring him on to kind of get a perspective of the Big Ten since Ohio State just played in the national championship game.
Yeah, that'll be something I'll ask you next time. You talked about having season tickets out there for Cal.
Yes.
And so I had season tickets to the University of Memphis. And this is not a knock toward Memphis, but those early 90 teams that Memphis had, they were tickled to death to go 6-5. They were tickled to death. Ground Chuck Stobart was the coach for the Tigers back then, Stephen. So his name says everything about his offense.
Yes. Well, do you want to go on ahead and let me replay the interview with Coach Freeze? Because I really want to get your opinion about the transfer portal and what it's going to do.
Yeah, play it real quick.
Okay.
Well, it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
You're living in the recruiting world is solely driven by communication through Zoom right now, or FaceTime, or texting and phone calls, which was pretty normal anyway. But really, this new world of visual recruiting through technology is the way of the world right now. It was the entire recruiting class of last year, and by the time we are set free to resume as normal, which who knows when that is. Right now it's set for April 15th as a tentative date, but every date has been backed up. So I don't know that will happen either. And so you're basically looking at two classes that you have recruited by trying to evaluate and get to know young men and their families through the virtual world. And it's I don't know. It's there's parts that I really like. I don't like going on the road to begin with, and I know our assistant coaches love being at home with their families. But you certainly need times to go eyeball and see kids and get to know them a little better than probably we're able to do on Zoom and other forms. But it is what it is. We can't complain about it, and we're not in control of it. So we've got to do the best we can. And I think we signed a heck of a class so far, in the 18 that we signed in the early period. And now you add to this dilemma that we're facing with not being able to go and get to know kids and families in recruiting, and you add to it this new transfer portal world that we're getting ready to experience. And man, we're in for a roller coaster ride. I mean, rosters can now change drastically in a matter of days. And I don't know, somebody's going to have to sit down and have some reasonable discussions with the coaches, because I don't know that the people that have made and is going to pass these have really taken into account the dilemma they're putting us in and trying to manage a roster. I mean, we theoretically, guys, we could go into spring ball, feel pretty good about our team, as could any other team, and then May, you lose 10 guys to this transfer portal world. And how do you, which that's fine if that's what we want to do. I don't think it's a great practice for our sport, but if that's that's fine. But you've got to let us replace those 10. You can't say that, oh yeah, they can leave, but no, you can't sign anymore, or you're going. And then it becomes a health and safety issue for your team to not have the number of bodies to go into a season. So somebody's got to have some discussions pretty quick about how do we manage the roster when you do lose some to this transfer world.
Right.
Coach, I heard the guys on Super Talk Mississippi talk about this, and I thought they made a good point. We're going to get a lot of things wrong in recruiting here this year. Coaches aren't able to evaluate, no camps, things like that. And they thought that the transfer portal would just blow up because there's going to be some things that there was a lot of things that we might be getting wrong, coaches. How do you feel about that aspect of it? Do you think that we're going to see a lot of transactions going on, transitions?
Yeah, the people that are going to get hurt in this are the high school kids. And it's not our intention.
Right.
But we can't go and see them. We can't bring them to camp right now. We can't. So if you're in our shoes, I saved, 9 scholarships just because I believe that the transfer world, I can evaluate them on tape.
Yes.
Right.
They played in some games. And and that's not ideal because you still don't get to trip them. You don't get to home visit. So, but it's less of we're all about risk management, and there's probably less of a risk of signing a transfer. I mean, there's some no-brainers for sure, but those are at schools like, the Power 5 top echelon. There's some no-brainers for sure, but when you have to really be a good evaluator of talent, and you can't bring them to camp, and you can't go and see them live, we would lean toward, let's look at the transfer portal. And unfortunately, a byproduct of all of this is, I think it's going to be several negatives. One, I think high school kids will have fewer opportunities. And I also think that that there's not a good enough understanding of this transfer portal by the current college players. I think you might see a lot of kids enter it and not have a home because of the current setup with initial scholarships and stuff, and that's going to create another issue. So we were on our head coach's call the other day, and we're not really excited about the next few months of this profession we're in. Not because we don't love it, but because we do love it. And there needs to be some more common sense approaches with in some of these decision making meetings.
So there you can see, once again, the dilemma that they put a bunch of coaches in is basically, well, like Coach Freeze said, if 10 players opt out or go to this transfer portal, then what do you do by making up those 10? So Heath, what are your thoughts on that? Because we really didn't have time to talk about it last time because of the national championship game. Apparently, we've lost Heath. I do apologize about that, but that is a real big issue there with Coach Freeze having brought up that issue there, and it's going to be real interesting to see what happens moving forward. So once again, we have lost Heath. I do apologize, and hopefully we can get him back real quick. He is in the process of actually restarting his computer. So let me go ahead and pull him up here now. Are you with us?
Yeah, I was with you the whole time. I don't know what happened.
You were frozen, my friend. You were frozen.
I kept looking at the thing, and I was like, well, I was actually texting you. I was like, are you okay? I didn't know if you dropped dead of a heart attack or started fighting more bad guys or.
No, I couldn't see you, man. You were frozen, and so I just took it solo for a minute. But what are your thoughts on what Coach Freeze had to say?
The high school kids are going to get hurt. That was the biggest thing that he said. And he said it's not intentional, but they're not able to evaluate these kids. They're not going to be able to get this right.
Yes.
And I don't think that may not be what Coach Freeze was saying. It might be exactly what he was saying, but there's going to be so many things that are going to be wrong in this. And so I think schools that run systems will benefit during this time. But I'll say this, Stephen, Dan Mullen is going to be the guy that wins the transfer portal. He works that transfer portal harder than anyone. Florida's a national name. It's a big-time brand. And Dan Mullen is going to just clean sweep a lot during this time.
I would also say the school that rings the cowbells right there would too, just simply because of the air raid system that Mike Leach does with the quarterback play. I really feel like that Mississippi State, maybe not the running backs or the O-line guys, but the quarterbacks and definitely the wide receivers could choose Mississippi State because of the pirate over there in Starkville.
Well, you know, if you look this past week, there was a big-time announcement from a guy. There was a guy last Friday. I'm trying to think what school he was from. He announced, and they found out that he is not a grad transfer. He only had 1 year of eligibility, and the SEC has a rule that you can't transfer with just 1 year remaining with your eligibility. And so he couldn't come. And then lo and behold, an even better wide receiver came up right behind him from Cal, and he wanted to come in. And so I thought it was just quite interesting. And I might have got those schools backwards. Maybe it was the kid from Cal that couldn't come, and they picked up someone else. But you know, I was just kind of looking at it like, wow, this is big time for things. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how things work. And you know, your blue bloods like Alabama, you might have guys, some 5-stars sitting around wondering, hey, man, we can hit this transfer portal and have immediately eligibility somewhere else.
Yes.
What's to keep them from playing or playing for someone else, I should say, because they're not getting the playing time where they're at currently. So there's going to be a lot of turnover. But I'm telling you now, watch for Dan Mullen, the Florida Gators. Dan Mullen was kind of the pioneer of working the transfer portal in its inception. He's kind of mastered it. So watch for him to work that hard and plug any and all holes. And just, I'm telling you, Florida's already stacked, but he gets the pieces to fill in around what he's missing, and Dan Mullen can make a huge run here in the next couple of years. Absolutely.
Well, man, let's go to another sport. Now, I was not able to get highlights from this, but there are a lot of fellow Mississippi State fans that are not happy with Coach Howland and the Mississippi State Bulldogs leading the entire A&M game and losing by 1. What are your thoughts on that?
Wasn't a good loss at all.
Right.
Wasn't a good loss. You know, this has kind of been the theme even since Rick Stansbury. This has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah.
You know, Rick Stansbury would randomly lose a home game to a really bad Alabama basketball team or a terribly poor Georgia basketball team. You know, he would be ranked in the top 15 and just randomly lose to a team that was below 500.
Yeah.
And a home game at that. And so, you know, that was Rick Stansbury. And we won't get into to the other coaches over the top. We won't get into Price, but you look at Howland coming in, and he slowly kind of built. But man, oh man, just when Mississippi State's kind of getting some energy and the fan base is kind of starting to take notice, and then you lay an egg like that. That's a really bad loss. You know, how crazy is this? You know, we can't say it's 2020 anymore, Stephen, but how crazy is like that Kentucky loss was a joke. That's a bad loss when you lose to Kentucky. You know, but his two bad losses here in 2021 is not a good Kentucky team and a bad A&M team. And did them both where? At home.
Yes.
Of all places. There's no home court advantage, you know, in college basketball. There's not. Fans aren't allowed to be in there, but or the limit of anybody being in there, I should say. But, basketball is going to be a fun thing to watch this year because everyone's laying eggs. It's kind of like college football all over again. You know, we see upsets in college basketball more often, but this is going to be fun to see the craziness and topsy-turvy. And let's just say if Kentucky puts things together and they win their last 11 games to close out the season, is the NCAA committee going to consider them? I mean, if they're a blue blood, are they really going to consider them like, hey, this is a great team. They just now figured it out. And are they going to squeeze out a team that should be well-deserving, a mid-major, that's going to be pushed to the side because Kentucky couldn't get its act together for the first 15 games? I mean, this is going to be a fun season to see, and there's no telling how this is going to turn out for anyone.
Yes. Well, man, that's going to do it for this edition of the Stingray Show. Now, of course, college football is over, but we are going to make a quick announcement that now that college football season is over, we are still going to be here with you guys on the air throughout the off season, and we're actually going to start interviewing former players about their playing days at their respective schools. So if you would like a former player to come on the Stingray Show, please either DM myself or Heath to let him know what players you would like for us to reach out to so that we can have them on the Stingray Show.
So, Stephen, hey, I know you're kind of bandaged up and dinged up, but, you know, are you going to make it to the weekend? What are your plans this weekend?
Sit back, relax, and watch a little NFL playoff.
I hear you. What is there any dining suggestions that you have as we sit at home and watch these NFL playoff games? What are you going to make? Are you going to be by the grill? Are you going to order pizza? What are you doing?
Chicken wings or chicken thighs.
Can't lose on either.
Yes.
Can't lose on either.
Right. Well, man, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the reins at the start of the show. But we finally got it together. Today was definitely a work in progress, but thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend, and we will see you right back here on the Stingray Show Tuesday with hopefully a big-time guest.
Go Saints.
Yes.
The Dogs and Stingray are coming for you.
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn.
Worst defense ever!
So without further ado, here is the biggest
Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes. Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings. He's got it. Jennings. He's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee. They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium. Are you kidding me? My God almighty. What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry.